All right, welcome everybody to the 9/11 Tribute Museum's Real Talks at Home program. I am your moderator, Kwaku Farrar. And today on our program, we have Mark Damore, who is a Lower Manhattan resident, as well as Sonia Agron, who is the wife of a 9/11 first responder, as well as a 9/11 recovery worker. And they are going to be in conversation today. So briefly go over this program as some of you may be watching for the first time. This program is special because it takes our volunteer community, all of people who have a 9/11 connection, to meet for the first time or meet if they've met before, to meet and share their stories. Because a lot of our volunteers, we have over 900, may have met in passing, but not everybody knows each other's stories. So we figured we'd have a program where they can meet and have an in-depth conversation, share their stories, and then we can get that information to you because it's really important for you to really understand the history of 9/11 on a deeper level. So we're going to kick things off today by having Mark and Sonia kind of discuss their lives pre-9/11. Then they'll kind of discuss their 9/11 experience and the immediate aftermath. And then they'll talk about their lives in the 19 years since 9/11. So I will give the floor up to Mark and Sonia, and feel free to chat away.
Hi, Mark.
Hey, Sonia. You want to start?
No, I'm going to let you start because I've seen you, but I really don't know your story.
So prior to 9/11, Donna's my wife, we moved down to the area. We moved to the neighborhood. And we moved here not because of the towers, nothing to do with the towers, nothing to do with finance, nothing to do with the architecture. It was an empty neighborhood. There were no strollers. There were no, bankers. It was empty. We found a big space. From the bedroom, I could see the World Trade Center at night when I fell asleep. It was there, but it didn't have a prominence. The funny thing was, we got connected to it over time because it became a pin drop. It was our connection to the neighborhood, meaning I'd be driving in from New Jersey and I'd have a client in the car and I'd go, hey, look at that out there. That's where I live. And in fact, my office was there. In 93, I moved my office a block closer. Donna and I were both in advertising, medical. So we worked in the medical area. And the apartment is 4 or 5 blocks away, and the business was 4 blocks away. So we were right here in the middle of it. And, the World Trade Center had kind of a community feeling to it. When Krispy Kreme opened up, I'm telling you, Donna and I were down there. The World Trade Center became a place to go. Plus it had malls down there and Donna could spend money like crazy. So we began getting connected to it. We'd sit outside with our donuts and coffee. And Donna did this thing where she said, let's make a donut toast. And would clink our donuts together. And that was it. It'll come up, maybe later I'll fill in where that all goes. But that was us before. We were happy down here. We had a good life. We worked, and that was our life. We worked. I mean, that's what we were all about.
Are you still there?
Yep. And, as I tell my neighbors, you're going to have to drag me out of this apartment.
That's good. Well, for me, I was an emergency medical specialist. I also taught the course. And that's what I did for a while. My husband was a New York City police officer. We had a baby, and it was a pretty interesting life because up until then, I don't think I fully appreciated the life of a first responder. I didn't know that they had to decompress when they came home until it started happening to me. So that kind of bonded my husband and I together. Then I was living in Queens at the time. I moved to the Bronx, and an accident with EMS would curtail my career. I always thought I'd go back, at least maybe teaching, but that wasn't in the cards. but I had a young daughter, and so I just made the best of my life, and I became what my mother calls a perpetual volunteer. I volunteered it any way I could. I couldn't work anymore, so it was just something that I felt I needed, to do. Um, I missed being an emergency medical specialist. It was the best job I've ever had. Stressful, sometimes very heartbreaking. And for the most part, it was the most beautiful thing for me when it didn't matter how tough my day was. If I delivered a baby, then it was all worth it. And so that's the way my life was up until 9/11.
If I can ask you, and then because it strikes me a point, you talk about this decompression, and decompression is important after day. One of my volunteer efforts that I've started this year that I'm really involved with a lot of work is I'm a crisis counselor for Crisis Text Line. And decompression and debriefing is important in doing that. And the reason I'm asking about it is because, throughout this whole thing, after 9/11, I don't think decompression ever is fully accomplished, at least for me, I just wanted to say that.
No, you are right. I learned about, well, I used the word decompression without even understanding it. But I understood when I would come home. I mean, I'd have a 8, 9, 12-hour tour if I got hit with overtime, and it would be helping a little old lady cross the street to a gunshot wound, or delivering a baby and seeing somebody else get hit by a car. My day was just up and down. And by the time I would get home, I had a baby to deal with and a husband, and they wouldn't, how would they know how my day was if I don't say it? So I had to learn when I got home to just, on the drive home, just leave things behind. And it hit me that is why sometimes when my husband would come home after overtime or making an arrest, he would be totally silent. And, in the beginning, it bothered me, like, let's talk, what's going on? And it wasn't until I started working that I understood, and it connects. The only thing we never did was jobs had unless we answered a job together, which was pretty interesting. But other than that, I just understood what he was dealing with. After 9/11, there was no conversation. It wasn't something he could talk about. And when I went down there, against his advice, but I do it again, I couldn't talk about it either. And that whole decompression routine went right out the window, and it stayed with us for about 7 years.
Yeah, that's really the tough thing. Let me talk about the day for me, because what's interesting with this decompression, now that I'm doing crisis counseling, and you're counseling, kids who are depressed, kids who are anxiety, relationships, and then you get the occasional suicide. And you never realize how much you take in. So on that day, it was 9/11, and, it was a beautiful day. It was wonderful. I went to my office, which was just down the street, got in early, made coffee for my employees. They came in 8:15. We were talking. I said, let's go to work. I don't want to talk to anybody. We got work to do. Sitting at my keyboard. And I heard the American Airlines flight at, what was it? So I went, I'm in the office. It's a beautiful day. The day before was horrible. It was like humid. It was New York City at its worst. It's the reason you want to move to the woods. Thoreau, if he lived in New York City that day, would go to Walden Pond. I wanted to do it, but this day was gorgeous. Got to the office. Donna woke up. She was going to go to her work. I was already at work. 8:45 or so, I hear this jet engine. Now, I have heard jet engines before. I've been on tarmacs, in South America or Central America. And the jet engines are loud. This was like nothing I ever heard. Our building is the office building is a 5-story building. It's a walk-through building. And for those not familiar with New York City, it's a railroad flat. It's one long, room. And on one side, the windows face north. On the other side, the windows face the World Trade Center. So I'm sitting at my desk. This jet engine is so loud. The building is even shaking as it comes over. Instinctually, I do a face plant on my keyboard, figuring it's all over. Heard the explosion. Ran to the north windows because they bounced off the north windows. Said, getting goosebumps repeating it. Ran to the south window and looked out. And there was a North Tower engulfed. Flames, smoke, debris falling out. My employees, a couple that were there, a month later said, "Your language is not very good, Mark. You were using words that we never heard." I mean, I could not believe it. Now, at the same time that happened, Donna told me later, and again, I want to reference Donna a lot because her view of what happened was much more nuanced. My view was the events because my PTSD was about me making sure my employees had a job, they could be paid. I was locked into doing stuff, which is basically my makeup. But Donna told me, she said, I was getting in the cab, I looked up, saw this plane, saw it hit the building. Now she's a true New Yorker. Jumped in the cab and said, "Let's get the heck out of here." And she said, "I thought, this is New York City. Everything gets fixed." She said, "Boy, was I wrong." So I'm watching the North Tower engulf. I'm sitting there at about 9:15. The two towers are like this. Here's the North Tower, or here's the South Tower. It was like this. The North Tower is in front. I couldn't see the plane strike, but suddenly these flames leap out of the South Tower. I could see it. And it looked like the dragons from Game of Thrones. Just this breath. I couldn't see them touch. I thought they licked the North Tower. At that point, grabbed my employee, ran home, put him inside. The housekeeper was there, and luckily, she closed all the windows early on. And then I grabbed my binoculars and went back. I was wondering, what's all this stuff falling out of the building? I regret doing that. That is the most personal, private moment in anybody's life. That does not deserve to be viewed. It deserves to be memorialized. It deserves to be respected. Put the binoculars down just in time to watch the South Tower come down. And there's more to the story. Because Sonia, were you in the Bronx at the time? Or?
No, September 11th was my husband's 51st birthday, so I had to go into Midtown. And
mine's September 10th, by the way.
See? So we're and I was evacuated, but they didn't tell us why. And again, New Yorker, doesn't faze me. I thought gas leak until I saw wall-to-wall people. And at that same moment, I saw fighter jets. And honestly, I had only seen fighter jets in movies, never that close, not even the Blue Angels. And I knew something was wrong. My cell phone went off. And it was my husband, and he said, "Listen to me carefully. We are at war. We're being attacked. You need to get out of the city, get on the next bus out, stay away from the train." But then we got cut off. And I had no idea what he was talking about, but because I saw the fighter jets and where I was, I thought, okay, this is where we're being attacked. So I made my way to the bus stop, but no buses were stopping. And so I would know later on that the city had shut down. And I knew at that point I had to figure out what was going on. And what was really strange was people were saying that the World Trade Center had been attacked. And I thought, not possible. They did it already. Why would they do it again? And where I was, I just had to go into the middle of the street and look straight up, and they were on fire. And so I knew, oh, well, we are in trouble. I found a hotel. I had to know what was going on. And that's when I walked into the lobby of a hotel and I saw the building go down. I honestly can't tell you which one it was. I don't even know the time. I really have not even tried to think about that. But I wondered at that moment, where was my husband calling me from? Because he knew too much information. And part of my training at EMS is to stay focused, do the job, and you can freak out later. And I knew that I had to learn more. And sadly, that's when I would hear about the Pentagon and Shanksville. And I understood what he meant when he said we were at war. But now my job was, how do I get home to my 16-year-old? I didn't even know if she was home because we had gotten cut off. I didn't know if she was stranded somewhere. I didn't know. But I had to stay put until we got some notice. And that's when, I don't really know the time, but I know it was before 5. Right at the bottom of the television screen, it said, Mayor is opening up the city. I think it said 2 hours or something. And some of us who were going the same way were able to get a cab. And well, when I got home, my daughter looked at me as if she was looking at a ghost. And as I got closer to her, I would hear her say, please God, let her be for real. And it was that moment I realized that she had been home all alone, all day. I mean, I just made the connection very quickly. And she knew that daddy was down there, and she thought probably that daddy was gone. And she knows once a responder, always a responder. And she probably thought that I went down as well to respond and that I was gone. So as I got closer to her, the phone at home rang, which was very odd because there was no phone service. And so we picked it up, and it was my husband. I can't say we were happy. We were relieved. It's like we could breathe. And he said, it's really bad here. It's a war zone. It's so dark, I can't see anything unless I stand close to it. And it didn't make sense to me because I'm still looking at a bright blue day. And then he said, I could hear in the background the police radio, and people are just still yelling, no, go here, go there. And I'm trying to make sense of it. And he said, they're putting up Nextel. That, again, I didn't understand what that meant. And I'll call you at 10. I'm going to be near Tower 7 setting up for the National Guard. And we said, I love you. We hung up. The phone rang again, and it was my friend. And as she was calling from Tennessee. So I made the connection. If she can get through, I stopped her, and I started giving her phone numbers to call the family to let them know that Joe was okay and that I was okay. And then I told her where Joe was, and there was complete silence. And she said, do you have the TV on? And I said, no, it was too much. And she said, turn it on. I don't know how to tell you this. And we saw Tower 5 go down. Tower 7 go down. And I don't remember hanging up. I don't remember much of anything. I remember my daughter saying that it wasn't fair that we got to speak to Daddy and that he's gone. And it was that moment that I didn't have time to be a wife or Sonia. I had to be a mom. And so I told her, you're going to hold on until 10 o'clock because without hope, we cannot cope. And you need to understand that there are thousands of people that are never going to get this call. It is really bad. And we got to say, I love you. And we got to say, I'll see you later. So we're going to hold on to that until 10. But he didn't call. And so we thought the worst until the next day. I'm going to let you have it now.
Sonia, if I may give you a prop, that is so brilliant. Who called you? Your sister or your?
Oh, it's a friend from Tennessee. This is why it was so
Well,
hard. How did she get through?
But I got to tell you, you had the wherewithal.
Oh, that's
That
my
took
training.
That's right. That's the
That's my
training. I
training.
mean, I gotta give you props on that. That was brilliant. I'm sitting there listening to that. I mean, the rest of it's heartbreaking to have to go through that whole, like, what happened in the wherry, because I know what that feels like. So I watch the South Tower go down, and I run out of my office. I go the one block, and I'm looking down West Broadway, or down West Broadway, and I see this billow of dust come rolling down. It looked like you're on the Lone Prairie. And it kind of went to the side streets a little, but because New York City is a city of canyons, it all stayed on that. Went to the office. Not the office. Went to the home. My employees were there. I grabbed my camera. I went out. I started taking pictures of the debris. One of the things that was so striking to me was that there were all these pieces of paper on the ground. You know this. I mean, when you were down there, you saw it. But they were torn, the edges burnt, crinkled. And I took some pictures of it. And all I could think about was, oh, they were in a file cabinet. They were in a waste paper can. They were on a desk. And then I realized, were they in somebody's hand? So I go around West Broadway through the debris, and I'm walking toward the North Tower, which is engulfed, and it's standing there proud and tall. Suddenly, and in slow motion, it took 11 seconds, as we all know, it started to pancake. I turned and I ran. Now, you could see people who were evacuating. They were covered in dust. It looked like something from a Japanese kabuki, all in white, covered. So I'm hightailing it out of there, getting to my house. The dust comes up. But when I started working at 9/11, as I'm sort of trying to, the tribute, as I'm trying to, put my story together, I think back on the North Tower. And because I put a life in everything, I could hear the North Tower saying at that time, look, I tried the best I could. I tried to stand. I tried to get everybody out. And I couldn't do it. I'm sorry. And it came down. And that, to me, captured that moment. We all tried. So, I got home. My employees, the power went off. Employees and the housekeeper all headed out, went to either Penn Station or across the Brooklyn Bridge. And there I am, power out, and I can't find Donna. No cell service. They blocked off Canal Street. She can't come home. So I'm there. I got the 2 dogs, I'm there. Now, you got to understand, Donna is a take no prisoners, independent woman. I mean, seriously. Think about a sergeant in one of the precincts.
Yeah.
That's her. So I'm figuring, okay, she's okay. Door opens up, and the first thing I'm thinking, oh God, she's going to be pissed because there's no electricity and she had to walk upstairs. I'm going to hear that. Comes in, and she's holding, and this goes back to what your husband said to you. She's holding 2 American flags, and she's wearing a camo bandana. And I'm looking at her, and I say, you're Chanel, you're Prada. You don't wear camo. And she just looked at me very calmly and said, we're at war. Don't you get it, idiot? We're at war. And she had no TV, no radio. She picked up on that automatically. Hung the two flags up. She's petting the dogs, and she just casually says, "Is Krispy Kreme gone?" Now, we have the type of marriage where, I can kid around with her. I said, "You want a donut now?" She looked up at me, called me idiot again. She said, "No, I keep thinking those donuts became halos for everybody who died." Oh,
Wow. You saying that, see how it connects to us? I'm going to fast forward a bit. When I eventually went to Ground Zero, the first 2 nights, I was very frightened. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I just wanted to do my job. And during one of my breaks on the third night, I was asked by a group of women if I wanted to go and pray. And I thought, well, okay, I can do that. Because I kind of felt very helpless. I didn't even know what I was doing, if I was doing anything good. And I didn't realize that they were going to take me to Ground Zero. And she lifted up my, and I've never really said this to anybody, she lifted up my ID and she says, "Hey, dummy, can you read? It says access everywhere." And I hadn't even looked at my ID. They just handed it to me and I did everything that I was told to do. And so I asked her, "So where are we going?" And they all looked at me like, "Okay, we're going to have to take care of this one." And all I remember was mud. And I know now that this was where the North Tower was, but I didn't know at the time. And I think that was the moment when I had to put everything together that I had seen days before. And I said stupidly, "Where is everything?" And they hugged me, and all I could see was the big lights, because I did midnights. And all I could see was these big lights that they had put up, and they were particles. And as we were praying, we were asked if anyone wanted to say something, and I just felt compelled to say, "Those particles are the souls finding their way to heaven." And it's odd that you saying this to me, because I kind of felt, what if they think I'm dumb? Like, that's such a dumb thing to do. It was the only thing that I could reconcile. It just didn't make sense that there's so many people there and there were so many people underneath there, and I'm standing on a hill. Can't we go down there and do something? And they just looked at me and said, "This is the best we can do." But I just remember distinctly, and Mark, you're the first one that ever said that too. I looked at those lights and I saw those. I know they were dust particles, but for me, I had to reconcile in my head that they were the souls trying to find their way home. And it changed me, because when I got back, when I got back to St. John's, they actually reassigned me to first responders. And I thought, oh, okay. Well, because my husband hadn't been speaking to us all those days. I didn't go down until 2 weeks. And my husband was coming home every night and he wasn't speaking at all. And when he did finally speak, it was to tell us that his partners didn't make it. And so for me, I couldn't help him. And that's my job, I just couldn't help him. And when they assigned me to the first responders at midnight, I had to help them go from eating, taking a shower, and assigning them their sleeping quarters. And I thought, well, whatever I'm doing, I hope somebody will do for my husband during the day.
yeah.
It was the best at that moment that I could do.
It's interesting with Donna, for her saying that, and Donna is not one of these, new age earthy people. But that moment, she just summed it up, and I stood there with my mouth open when she said that. But she's a creative director, she's an artist, so that was her thing. So that night, Now, the day before, the reason, when I say this, just want to put it in context. The day before, Don ended up having somebody come in, and she decided a 1/4 inch off the granite counters, have it all shaved off, and there was all this dust over the house. And I was furious by the time she got home that day, because I'm trying to clean up all this granite dust. And I'm bitching and moaning, carrying on. So anyway, so that night, power's off, throw all the food in the refrigerator in the oven. We haven't. I'm looking for a hotel. I look for a hotel. We stayed at the Tribeca Grand. Oh, wait, let me go back. So I said to Dawn, I said, how did you get past the barricades? And she just looked up at me and said, I ducked and ran like hell. I guess they didn't care. I mean,
Donna.
so Donna, you're right. And she got home. So that night I take the dogs out, and there's still this dust, inches to whatever on the ground. I'm come back in, and I'm washing the dogs' paws off and cleaning them off. And Donna walks over to me and leans over while I'm down, and she looks at me and says, yesterday you were complaining about a little bit dust in the house. She pointed out the window and said, I don't want to hear another thing from you. The world has changed.
I love Donna.
Nothing will ever be the same. Let's just get used to it. And again, remember, she is a true realist in the moment. Me, I'm thinking, well, got to get a hotel. How my employees, da 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 da. That was my denial. That's what I was doing. So that was the night. We got to the hotel. And then I kept having to come home to feed the birds and so forth. In 3 days, power was back on, which was, and you're a New Yorker and you'll appreciate this, Con Edison turned the juice on for an entire neighborhood in 3 days. You can barely get them to come to your house in a month. So it was amazing. I mean, they had these big cables on the street, and the streets were immaculate. The sad part of it was my office was blocked off. I couldn't get into it. I finally got an emergency management badge. I ended up volunteering down at the hotel, at the Red Cross Center. So I was talking to 2 cops that were guarding the fence, and I, bought them some coffee and whatever. They walked me up to my office. I filled up a wagon with my computers and servers, and I was able to take it up 10 blocks north and get my business going, which was important to me. And we'll talk about the time after, because that becomes critical. The day is critical, but the time after and what we all felt. I mean, I want to talk about community and how it just touched me so greatly. I mean, you must have it because you were down there on the pile.
Again, what a nice segue to this moment that I'm going to share with you. I did midnights, so it was always dark for us. And it was really disturbing that those first few weeks I had to come by bus from Brooklyn, and then they eventually gave me permission to go down on my own. But at the 4-block mile, they would stop, and the National Guard would make us show our IDs. And 2 blocks then down, we'd do the same thing. And then our last stop, and I found myself not only feeling frightened, but annoyed. This is my country. I didn't do anything. And why are you asking me this? Though I understood why, it was for our protection. But I couldn't be relieved until somebody came to relieve me. And that's when I felt it was 2 different worlds, because I'd go in at dark and all you would see is smoke and particles and these big lights. And then I get up, look out the window, and it's sunny. And just maybe 4 blocks away, there are parents walking their kids to school, and kids are jumping around and laughing, and you can see trees and daylight. And it's like I was leaving another world behind. And after a while, it became like, I can't go. I have to stay. I feel like I was leaving people behind. And that became a problem because I would come home in time to do things at home and then pick up my daughter from school, but I couldn't sleep. I just couldn't. I didn't want to see what I had seen, and that's all I kept seeing every time I slept. And I would say after my 4th day of doing that, I understood why every time I would take the first responders to their quarters to sleep, they would grab my hand and say, "Can we just sit for a minute? I don't want to close my eyes." And I understood what that meant. And so I got, you know, Donna's creative, I'm crafty. So I got this idea that I had some time, and I went to the supermarket and I bought a bunch of lifesavers. And I put them in baggies, and every time I went near a first responder, I would hand them that, and they would look at me and say, "Why?" And I would tell them, you're a lifesaver. And, you know, just to see them smile. And I thought it was so ridiculous, but it would be, I've got to say, maybe about 2 months ago. I also did chapstick, and I made little flags, and I called them hero sticks, and I put them around the chapsticks. And it would turn out that I would run into a friend of my husband's who's now a chief. And he pulled out a hero stick. And my husband looked at him and said, "Where did you get that?" And he goes, "I've transferred from many stations since 9/11, but I always take this with me. Some woman gave it to me, and it was me." And he sent me a picture, and I thought, "No, 18 years later, you still have that?" And he says, "It's what got me through." And here I was thinking all these 18 years that I was really dumb and crafty, and that was really silly, but now has a lot of meaning. So while Donna is, you know, creative, I became crafty.
But what you did was, and I got goosebumps just listening to, this is our way
That's right.
of decompressing. But more importantly, you know, 9/11 comes and everybody gets all involved, and we do the flyovers and everything. Don't get me started. But the reality is, at least from what we're talking about and sharing, this goes on forever.
For us.
I mean, for us. I mean, I don't think about it all day. I don't remember. But once I get into it, I get these little glimmers of, oh, yeah, that hurts. That feels bad. And I think what's missing to the larger world is that we still need help. We still need counseling. We still need, I mean, the healthcare we're getting. We are still hurting, and the world needs to know that. Not to focus on us in a selfish way.
No,
but
that's not selfish.
But you know what I'm saying? It's like, do they really get how much this hurts?
That's what I get out of what we do at Tribute.
Yeah.
That at the end of our tours, I don't think Tribute could ever pay us enough because the people hug us, and that's my salary. That to me is like, if I get one hug after a tour, I feel like, gee, I just got promoted. And they understand. They go home and they tell people what they heard us say, and they always tell me, I didn't know. And it's a good feeling that we're doing that. We're not doing it for ourselves. We're doing it for every single person that's been there. And now it's even worse because when on 9/11, I knew 5 people personally that were murdered. And here we are 19 years later, and I know over 200 because of their families, because people like you. And now I know more than that because they're dying of illnesses that people still don't know about. And it's not just that they're dying and they're no longer in pain and they're at peace. It's what they leave behind. They have to live.
That's the truth. That's what grief is. And I've written a lot on grief since Donna died. I did that. One of the points that I want to pick up on that I think you're correct about is the memorial is not a community. It's no longer the World Trade Center where Donna and I would go and have Krispy Kremes, where we would watch people come out and make fun of what they were wearing, or, you know, excuse me, you know, I would go there, she wouldn't. But it was a community. It was a place to go. It's not a community. You and I and Kwaku and 9/11 and what I tell on my tour, I say, you're now part of us. You're now our community. Around the world, we are a community, and I think that's what we gotta keep telling. Let me just bring a couple things up after. So 3 days later, we're back in, and you know the pile is smoldering, the fence is up. I find, you know, but what was surprising to me, this community thing, this pulling together. Every morning I'd wake up and I'd go outside, and there would be these piles of water, tube socks, which I later found out. The reason there were tube socks was the firemen need tube socks because they wear those boots. I didn't realize that. I said, who wears tube socks anymore? This is, you know, 2001. Water, toiletries, whatever. Every morning. Now, one of my neighbors upstairs, now there were in our building, everybody left. There were like 5 of us, 4 of us who stayed, and we were the pirates. We were the ones, like heck, we're leaving. This is our city. We're at war. We stayed. Maybe to Donna's detriment and, you know, everybody else's, but. So my neighbor told me that at 2 in the morning, they'd go out and unload the trucks to help put that out. So I was impressed with that. The other thing that struck me was suddenly there were all these food trucks and service trucks that were set up. And because I lived down in the neighborhood, we lived there, I could walk up to the trucks. I'd like a Big Mac, large fries, and a Coke. They just put it out. There was not a question. You know, a lot of people weren't chatty. The fire department never came up to this side of it, the north side. But, you know, there were police, there were some first responders, and they would talk a little bit. There were recovery workers. They talked very little, and you could see in their face what they'd been through. Once you went up the food chain to FBI, Secret Service, CIA, they chased you away. Go sit at another table, well, for obvious reasons. So that's going on. The fence got moved. I'm back in. And this is important. This, again, how Donna saw it, and I think ties back to what you and I do, what we do. So the buses started coming. And they were dislodging all these people to walk down to the fence, which was still smoldering. I mean, to walk down the pile. Yeah, I made the same face. Donna's reaction was, I had to grab her by the collar and drag her away from people because she wanted to let them know they don't belong here now. She didn't want them down here, not because, and I said to her, Donna, how do you know they haven't lost somebody? You know, the reality was if you lost anybody, you were on the, you know, you were where you were. And Donna said, Mark, it's not the time. There will be a time. There will be a time for us to come and gather. But right now, this is too fresh. The wound is too fresh. And I believe that the wound of grief or loss lets light in. And she was kind of saying, this is blocking the light from getting into us, from us realizing what went on. So now we have a memorial. Now we have a community. But she saw it that way. She saw that that was, you know, maybe you have a different opinion on people coming, but.
Our community is unique in that when I go to tribute and you know how we all sit there waiting for our shift to begin so we can do a tour. If other people walk in, you can just look at their faces, and if they're having a hard day, you know. And you know, you start automatically, you gravitate to them because you instantly know what they're feeling. They're having a hard day. For us, it's sometimes hard when we have a tour and we get a notification that someone else has died because of illness. And then Joe doesn't want to do a tour. And that's when I tell him we have to, and this tour is going to be dedicated to that person, and we need to tell the people what today is. And that's how we have found the way to keep this, I don't want to say alive, but for lack of a better word, people have become complacent. They have forgotten that there's a big community, that it didn't happen one day, and it didn't end in that midnight, and it didn't end with the cleanup, and it didn't end when they built the memorial or the new glade. No, it didn't. It still goes on. And for many of us, middle of August until probably a week after September 11th, we absolutely hate it, because we're just thinking about it. It's all over. That's when everybody wants to talk about it. Okay, we get it. I understand, thank you. But this happens every day to us. And, we get told, I can't tell you how many times I was told, what are you complaining about? Your husband came home. And I look at them and I said, yes, he came home. His body came home, but his mind and heart didn't. And you need to understand that. I'm married to two men, pre 9/11 and post 9/11, and they don't get that. They don't understand that. And that's the hardest part of what we do, to try to get people to understand that it's not over, and I don't think it ever will be. And we try through our volunteer work to find that sense of peace. And I've always been grateful to Tribute when they find ways for us to get together when we're not dosing. It's just we're with like-minded people. It's like I can understand your story and laugh, but still understand that you still have pain. Somebody else is not going to get that, because they don't want to remember. It's over, it's done with, let's move on. And I always tell them that's just what we thought in 1993, and 8 years later they came back. And we're not waiting for them to come back. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. It's still happening. And how does that go away? Especially if you're someone who's sick, and every day someone is dying, and you wonder, are we next? Because that's the reality we live with every day.
That's it. And I just want to again give you another prop. That is a brilliant visual, and one that I'll carry with me. You had two husbands, and that just sums it up. I mean, that is the title of a short story. That is just a brilliant insight. And as far as when July comes up and you start grieving, Donna's death is, she died on August 7th. So not years ago. So, yeah.
I'm so sorry.
It's fine. It's okay. I don't want to upset you.
I can't hug you.
Yeah. But the point is that you're saying is it creeps up on you, and suddenly you get, holy cow, it's that time. And my grief reaction to Donna is like I get choked up. Now, another thing you mentioned, and I do this in a lot of my writing, my memoir about Donna and other writing. Denial is indifference. Denial is denial is indifference said pretty. Denial is like refusing that something was there. You're ignoring that something was there. I mean, I can understand it, and that's the way we deal with PTSD. But I think people need to see we're still here, we're fighting, we're strong, we're surviving, we get up every day, we do this. I know with my with my crisis counseling, I have a community, but we're all on text. I don't know anybody. We can talk to people. But with this community from the first time I started, and thank you, Kwaku, for, training me. I felt like I belonged to a club. And it's not that we're elitist.
We just feel
Even the neighbors in the building who weren't here, who left for 4 or 5 or 6 months, they kind of get it because of the address. But they don't get it walking out and seeing the pile smoldering. They don't get it from smelling the smoke.
It's isolating.
It's isolated. So thank you so much. This is lovely.
I like this. And I'm sorry we're not able to hug.
You know what? One day soon. Bring the old man down. I'll take you out for beers.
Yeah, well, no, he doesn't drink, but I do. No, but we're back. We're going to be doing tours. This is the best time for me right now. This COVID thing has driven us crazy, and I'm just so happy that we're going to be able to continue doing our stories and bringing light to people's lives about what we went through, and hopefully what they can understand, because they should never forget. They need to always remember this, always.
My last words to everybody is it's not, never forget, because you're not going to, because the media is going to make it happen. What I would like to say is, remember that we're there. There are people that are hurting. We need help.
We do.
We need passion. We need empathy. We need to go someplace to tell our stories, not just to each other. And that's why we do the tours.
Absolutely.
Please embrace us. Help us.
Come.
By being there for us.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree.
And very well
put.
Very well put. And, thank you for, just making that point at the end as well, because, we do get to, at times be prisoners of the moment, in the year since, and only care, like the public may only care about it, the week of the 11th, and then we forget about it, and then we kind of do that cycle. But, it's really important for people to remember that, like you said, this is something that you have to live with every day. If you're connected to this, you live with it every day. You have family members who lost loved ones, whether it be on that day or since, and they have to live with that loss for the rest of their lives. So 9/11, therefore, is every day for them. So, we can't just think of this as something that's in a history book. This happened almost 20 years ago. We shouldn't care about this anymore. As long as, family members, survivors, people who lived in the area, anybody who's connected to this is alive, this has to continue to be talked about, has to continue to be remembered. People have to be honored. We have to put pressure, to really support the community, because this is something that people have to live with for the rest of their lives, and we can't lose sight of that. So, having you guys share your stories, and just share information that you would normally never get from a history book or watching a video, just historical video, getting that personal insight just really makes it more real for people. And hopefully, everybody who watches this really takes, just the lessons from your experiences to heart, and they can really, go back into their communities and just be better citizens, educate, their friends, family, whoever, about, what it was like that day and the year since. And hopefully, through that, that'll kind of resonate with people and spread, and we will truly never forget, because it's something that we just can't afford to do.
We will never forget, because we can't afford to.
That's right.
The pain is too much. You're absolutely right. Sonia, this was so wonderful. You have an amazing story. Where's the grandkid?
Well, no, she's home. She's home. My daughter's a teacher. She starts back to school, so I start next week taking care of her. So I'll be running around a lot. You'll meet her.
Good.
Thank you, Kwaku, for allowing us to do this.
Yes.
And for everyone listening, Tribute is open. Please, we got the stories. We have the stories, and we're willing to talk. Just please be willing to listen.
Yes. If you're a listener, we're ready.
Absolutely.
We'll listen to your questions.
Mark.
Ciao. Thank you, Quake.
See you soon, Mark. See you soon, Quake.
See you soon.
Absolutely. That's going to wrap up our program. Thank you all for watching. Thank you, Mark and Sonia. This has been a pleasure and an honor, and we'll catch you next time.
Ciao.
Ah.